gets, it gets tiring to start new things over and over. And so you kind of learn eventually to like, okay, I got to really check out this opportunity. What is really going to go into this? And now let's, make a plan that doesn't involve me trying to get rich next week with it.
If you're looking to leave the 9-to-5 and elevate your side hustle, the Hustle the Day podcast is the podcast for you. Your host, Trent Bray, left the 9-to-5 grind behind and is helping others do the same and focus on the future. Hear from others who have done it and how they did it. Jump in as we talk entrepreneurship, mindset, and strategy. Just take it one day at a time and hustle the day.
On this episode of the Hustle the Day podcast, I am fortunate to have Bradley Roth on the show. Really interesting story with Bradley, talking about going from fitness to real estate to traveling around the country and finding something to fit that niche. Really great stories. You're going to want to listen to it. Let's jump into it. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Hustle the Day podcast. My name is Trent. Super excited and honored to have Bradley Roth on the show today. Bradley, why don't you jump in? Tell my audience a little bit about yourself.
All right. First off, thanks for having me. Excited to be here. And I guess I'll give you the 3 to 5 minute whole background story to kind of tell you how I got here. I don't really like to explain who I am by saying what I do, or that's not how I usually identify. So I'll give a little background here. My parents are both from massive families. My dad was one of 9 and my mom was one of 17, right? Massive Catholic families. So they grew up like dirt poor. And, this might not sound relevant, but you'll see. So they grew up, in these massive families. They had nothing, even though, parents worked real hard and all that. And so they grew up with this very traditional mindset of, we're going to break the mold by going to college and getting like a job career, which was a big thing for them and their families. A lot of their siblings didn't quite end up doing that. So that's kind of how I was raised. And, my parents were very religious. I was homeschooled for a while, like up through 7th grade. That was an interesting experience. A lot of people are experiencing that right now during COVID, but then I ended up, I went to high school and I got into college, and the whole time I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. All I knew was I didn't want to sit at a desk all day and wear a suit and tie. And that was pretty much all I knew. But I got to college and I still, I went to UConn and didn't know what I wanted to do. But I liked working out and I was an athlete. That's kind of how I identified growing up, was I played a lot of sports. And so I'm like, well, what if I could train people, to, get better in that area. So, because I'd gotten really into training and kind of lifting right after I graduated high school. So I go into college and I'm like, well, I don't know what else I'm going to do. So, maybe I'll get a kinesiology degree, teach people how to, get stronger. And I found CrossFit. CrossFit first started to become a thing like while I was in college. I got kind of hooked on that. And, my dad had been saying, oh, why don't you get a business degree? My mom said, why don't you become an engineer? Because I loved Legos growing up. So she's like, oh, well, you love Legos, you could be a great engineer. I'm like, yeah, I don't know if that's quite the same. Didn't have to do math with Legos, right? But anyways, looking back, it's interesting because I think in hindsight, maybe I would have gone into business. I just honestly, my dad told me to do that, but I didn't know what that meant. Like growing up, my family didn't know a single entrepreneur or anyone's really self-employed even for that matter. So I honestly didn't know the word entrepreneur until about my senior year of college. I didn't know what it meant. I thought businesses were just these things that like existed and, that's just what it was or whatever. But so anyways, I go through college, I graduate in kinesiology and basically an exercise science degree. And I get an internship and then a job at kind of like my dream gym, which was close to home. Great gym. They're still in business today. I think, 10 years later. And I was working there. I loved it. I'm at the gym all day, right? Like what beats that? And it started out, very part-time. It's a smaller staff, 5 to 10 people. And I was like, well, I'm going to make this my career and move up and become full-time and own my own gym one day and all that kind of stuff. So I'm working there, a couple of years go by and I'm like, it's still very part-time. No one left. There's no real room to move up. So I started looking around like, okay, what else can I do to kind of supplement my income? Or I didn't really want to work at another gym because I felt like that'd be a conflict and stuff. So I was like, what do? I don't really have any background. I don't really have any like other skills. I think at that point, I was a fairly one-dimensional person coming out of college in terms of skill set and all that. But so I dabbled in network marketing a little bit, which was, not too bad. It was a good company. I learned some good sales skills and stuff like that. But after a little while, I realized that wasn't a long-term solution, right? So I said, why don't I become a realtor? I heard realtors can make good money and, all you gotta do is go take a test and I can do that on the, and still train at the gym and all that kind of stuff. So I go and I get my realtor's license, and this is like a couple of years, 2 or 3 years into training. And man, that was, that was quite an experience. I kind of, was promised the world at this brokerage and was not delivered really on any of it. So I was kind of just like, figure it out. So I kind of stumbled my way through being a realtor for a couple of years. And I started to eventually kind of like get the hang of it a little bit, gain some momentum. Still didn't really love it. And then, again, because I kind of didn't really know I didn't really have much mentorship in terms of kind of deal structure and contracts and all that. I ended up having a deal that was like a referral from a friend go kind of south, and it got kind of sticky legally and stuff like that. Which just really like, left me feeling really bad about all of it and really left a sour taste in my mouth. So I think that was kind of like my real signal that, okay, we got to do something else. And during that time, I had kind of been learning, as a realtor, you kind of naturally have to learn about marketing and sales a little bit because, you're in a brokerage, but you're still kind of on your own to a degree. So during that, I'm starting to read books. I'm starting to learn a little bit about marketing, entrepreneurship. And I'm like, I kind of realized the thing between the gym, network marketing, real estate is that they all were kind of like, had a certain level of freedom to them. It wasn't like, okay, you're here from 9 to 5 and, that's what you do. And I knew that like, I just don't operate well in that super controlled environment. And I think that comes from how I was raised. Again, very like strict kind of Catholic upbringing where it was like, these are the rules. Well, why is that the rule? Because we said so. And, I could never accept that answer. It drove me nuts. So my whole life has always been this kind of giant quest to find that freedom or kind of break free of those restrictions. So anyways, I'm learning about entrepreneurship and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, what can I do that's mobile? Because me and my now fiance girlfriend at the time, she's a nurse. We're like, well, she wants to do the travel nurse thing and we could travel around the country and see different stuff. And we love to travel. And I was like, well, I definitely can't do that with real estate. That's pretty localized, or at least being a realtor. And so I come across Tai Lopez, the infamous Tai Lopez, and I take a social media marketing course. This is probably in I'm trying to think, 2017. So Facebook and all that was starting to become really popular, Facebook ads and stuff. So I take this course. I'm like, oh, I'm going to learn this. I'm going to do social media for local businesses. And, I'm like, I know all these local business owners at the gym. I have all these connections. I'm going to kill it right away. And so I take this one course. I go get my LLC. And keep in mind, I've never worked for a real company. I really had zero background. I had no savings or anything. And so I kind of just jumped off and was like, I'm going to start making, 10 grand a month right off the bat, because I know these people are all going to hire me, to do their marketing, and didn't quite work out that way. Right. I had kind of just like anyone who's starting things, it's the Dunning-Kruger effect when you're new, right? You think you are a pro and you don't know what you don't know. And I very quickly kind of learned that business is a little bit more than just like taking a quick course and saying, hey, sign up with me. So I did get a couple clients kind of early on, enough to, I think, kind of keep me going at that point. And then maybe like 8 months to a year later, we decided to kind of jump off and do the travel nursing thing. And at that time, I really only had like 1 or 2 paying clients. So I was like, I'll get more, right? So we take off, and the first travel nursing assignment, and they're done in like 3-month kind of stints, is in Columbia, South Carolina. So we go down there. I'm like trying to like work for local businesses like remotely and find clients. And it was kind of not working great. We had a great experience. We loved being away from home and being in this new place. And so we did 3 months there. And then our next stop was Phoenix, Arizona. So this was just over 2 years ago now. We drove out in January. We cross-country road tripped it, which was awesome. And we got there. We'd never been there before. We moved there. We thought, like everyone thinks kind of the Phoenix area, I think it's like the Sahara Desert, where it's just like sand and dirt and, a few cactus here and there and stuff like that. But, we drive into Phoenix, and it's, it's beautiful mountains and palm trees, and the weather, of course, like 70 and sunny in January. And coming from Connecticut, the Northeast, I was like, man, this is like paradise. So anyways, we get out here, and I'm still doing kind of social media marketing. I'm still doing, I was doing some Facebook ads too. And I didn't really love it. I didn't really have like a niche, which I think was a big mistake. So I kind of I was always doing something, but I wasn't necessarily getting anywhere. And, when we were in Phoenix in the beginning, I was like, oh, it's not really worth it to go network because we're leaving in 3 months. Right. And then 3 months later, we're like, I think we want to stay another 3 months. And so we stay, then 6 months, 6 months turns to 9 months. And then at like the 9-month point, we're like, well, I think, I kind of realized that to get this thing off the ground, and especially if I'm working with small businesses, I think I need to kind of set up a hub, a home station for a while. And so we decided to do that, and kind of stay in the Phoenix area. And, during that time, work-wise, again, I'm still kind of doing social media, doing Facebook ads. I had kind of discovered chatbots along the way and thought they were really cool and stuff, but I didn't really know just yet how to use them and stuff like that. So I was kind of in this no man's land of online marketing. And I think it was last year, I kind of decided that I think, Facebook ads and social media management is great, and I kind of like it, but it's such a crowded space, and there's other people out there who I think could probably do it even better than me. So I decided I'm going to be, the chatbot guy. And, people, the number one misconception is that it's techie, and, I don't know how to write one line of any sort of code. I'm not a technical person, but the way, and I guess we can talk more about that later, but the way I got into it was very it's interactive psychology. And I'm like, okay, this is cool. This is something that's different. I think this can be kind of the future and more of a blue ocean than what I was doing. So I kind of dove into that. Same thing for a while. I was too stubborn to niche down. I'm like, oh, I'm going to help everybody. And which I think is definitely something I've learned over the last few years. And then I decided, I'm going to niche down to luxury apartment communities, because there's a lot of those here. And having one of these would have made it so much easier for us when we were leasing, because it was a real pain in the butt when we were looking for an apartment moving out here. Oh, this is going to be easy. They got the budget, yada, yada. So I go and I start knocking door to door, and I quickly learned that that's not the way to always approach these like bigger kind of enterprise level businesses. So then I get involved in the trade association, and it's expensive to go to these events, but I'm like, this is what you got to do. And I'm starting to make some progress, make connections. And then COVID hits like right in the middle. So I'm like, crap, what do I do now? So then again, I kind of was like bouncing around. I'm like, I like gyms. I work with gyms. There's a lot of med spas around here. My fiance was getting her Botox certification. So I'm like, but no, I'll work with them. And kind of same thing, like indecisive. And then, e-commerce and Shopify came out with this, everyone knows Shopify, right? You got a Shopify store, and they came out with this like integration that works with the platform that I use. So I saw kind of a new opportunity there. I'm like, well, this is something now that, and I realized like during that time working with these, trying to get in with these apartment communities, that I really didn't like the whole kind of like buttoned up corporate, working with those types of clients, because there's no real relationship there. And it's all about numbers and stuff like that. So I was like, I want to work with like the little guy. That's what I think I really like and what I resonate with. And that's still me at this point. So, having that integration sounds kind of like a little thing, but I was like, well, now I can give businesses, Shopify store owners who maybe don't have massive stores, this tool that they can then go implement and integrate and not get all hung up and stuck on the technical backend stuff, which is always kind of like a big sticking point in a lot of ways, using Zapier and all those third-party stuff. So then I was like, I think, and they also, understand the value of marketing. They all run Facebook ads and stuff like that. So that's where how I kind of got to like what I'm working on today. So that's like my very, very long-winded intro.
No worries. No, I love that. So we've talked before, and I wanted you to get to all those different points that you were talking about along your journey. Mm-hmm. And so I love that you went over those and kind of touched on all those, because like you said, you can't just be defined by what you do. It's right. The journey along the way and all those experiences that you had to get you to where you are today. So I love the niche that you're going after now, because like you said, I've got a Shopify store. Like those are the people that kind of know that they need help. They don't know exactly how they need the help, but you can show them how you're going to help them, which is great. And I love the theme of you kind of going against the grain and not wanting that stuffy atmosphere that you're used to. But one question I had as you're talking about your story is, why didn't you go the gym ownership route? Why didn't you go to online training or some of those things that you could have done that maybe allowed you to be a little bit more remote, but still go down that same route?
That's a great question. Honestly, I think online coaching is like such a common thing now, right, with COVID. But like 3 years ago, it never even really crossed my mind, to be honest, which is kind of crazy. And I love training people. I'd like to think I was pretty good at it. But I think when I started researching like things that were mobile, because that was like a huge thing for me, was like, I want to be able to go anywhere. And I felt like, I thought that like, this was probably some sort of limiting belief, right? But I was like, oh, you need like a gym and equipment and stuff, and you need to be there with people and see their movement and stuff. So I think that, and then also I get excited by new things and variety. So I think this like kind of shiny new business thing over here, I was like, oh, that sounds pretty cool. Yeah. I think that's a lot of entrepreneurs, right? In some sense, which is a blessing and a curse, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. It can be a blessing and a curse. Sometimes it's like, oh, there's this opportunity right there. I just need to reach out and grab it, but you don't realize how much work it takes to really get involved in that.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the reasons I share that whole story is because I think a lot of people think that everything's like linear, that like, oh, I only have experience in this area, so I can only go and do this, whereas like, again, I went from like no idea to like, the fitness industry to like online marketing, and real estate, whatever else in between. And so it's like, you got to just jump sometimes and kind of figure it out along the way. And I think people tend to put themselves in this box, like I could have put myself into a box. And I think I did for a while with like, I'm a fitness guy, I'm a trainer, that's what I do. And I don't really know anything else. And, that was me for a few years until I kind of started to branch out. And I've always been a very curious person, with broad interests and stuff like that. But I think that's an important thing for people to realize, especially today, like with the online, and you can go find cheap courses on anything that, in my opinion, are just as useful as like something you pay thousands of dollars for out of college. Like I've learned so much more, I think, through books and online courses in the last few years than I learned in 4 years of college, which obviously, and the amount of books you could buy for a college tuition is, you could buy a library. So,
that is for sure. And you know what, there's something there that I think that, like for example, you talked about your real estate venture and how you didn't really necessarily receive the support and the training that you thought you were going to get out of that. It's one of those things where it's like, I'm not a realtor. My main source of income is real estate investing, but you get a lot of these people who are just brand new into the real estate market. Oh, they're friends with somebody. They decide to use their friend as an agent. And you have to sit there and tell them how the whole process works. And it's like, if you would take 30 minutes on YouTube, you'd be able to figure out some of this stuff. Like, it's interesting that all the information that's out there and that people don't access it. So, I mean, there's a lot of people, you even say on your website, could you build your own chatbot? Sure. But is it going to serve you well? Probably not. You really do need an expert behind it, because what most people do, they get into the details of it and say, oh, I can do this. And then they just implement it and then they don't dig deep, basically.
Yeah.
So people are very surface level, and that's where you've gone above and beyond, dug deep. You really do know how to help people out when when they don't know how to help themselves out.
Yeah. That's been one of my biggest kind of like light bulb aha moments throughout this all, is learning that almost everything on the surface is, it's basically is 10 times harder than it looks on the surface, and it's going to take you a lot longer, right? Like I'm sure, you were telling me about your hustle energy drink, right? You thought, oh, it's just going to take a few months, and then like, a couple of years later, right, you're still working on it. Like everything that you like are like, oh, I'm going to like go in, like, like I'm working on a podcast, starting up a podcast. I'm like, oh, you just need a recorder, a mic, and you throw it up on iTunes, and like, you're good to go. And then as I'm looking into it, I'm like, oh man, there's like a lot to this. And I find that that's almost everything. And so I'm much more careful about what new projects and stuff I dive into these days than I was throughout. And so I think a lot of people get in this trap, and marketing is so good these days that it's easy to get sucked into this idea or that idea and kind of like see a surface level, like, oh, that's cool. Like people like, you flip houses, right? And people are like, oh man, like I want to flip houses. Like I see them doing that on HGTV. It looks so cool. You get to like interior decorate at the end. And I'm like, yeah, you're seeing like the 1% or 5% or whatever. That's like the really fun, flashy part. You don't see like, they show you a little bit of the setbacks, but not really. And
they're mostly manufactured setbacks too.
Yeah, it's all polished. Yep.
Yeah,
the iceberg.
It is interesting how that can be, and the funny thing is, when you get to a certain level, it can be a little bit easier to dive into those things. So, for example, I'm listening to the 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss right now. And he talks about, starting a supplement company. He's like, if you can't get a product delivered in 2 weeks, it's not worth it. It's like, Okay, well, this took me 3 years. And I thought the same thing. It's like, okay, I'll just get a private label product, modify it a little bit to, suit my needs, and go down the rabbit hole. And it's like, you know what, this is now a completely custom product, because the off the shelf stuff, you're not going to get the best customer experience out of that. You're just rebranding something, slapping a label on, and that's not a great way to build a brand or a legacy or anything like that. It's just a quick buck to maybe last a few years until you move on to the next thing.
Exactly. Yeah, it's just like the drop shipping industry, right? There's all these people selling courses like, oh, you can have your store up and be making all this money selling stuff off Alibaba in like a week, and you throw up this Facebook ad and you're good to go. And very, very rarely does that work out like they say, right? The quick buck never really ends up working long term. I mean, it's just like, if it happens to work, which it rarely does, then great. Well, now you got to start all over and work on the next quick buck idea, So that's been, again, kind of like piggybacking on that last point, is it gets tiring to start new things over and over. And so you kind of learn eventually to like, okay, I got to really check out this opportunity. What is really going to go into this? And now let's, make a plan that doesn't involve me trying to get rich next week with it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree with that. Agree with you. It does get tiring starting, chasing after those shiny objects and starting something new and winding it down and going through the process over and over again. So you found something that you like doing. You found something that has some opportunity once you find the right niche, and it sounds like you've found that target now. So what drew you to the benefits of a chatbot?
I think the first thing that really jumped out at me when I first saw this was how interactive it is. Like, we as humans, right, we're social creatures. We want to have conversations. That's how we're wired. But so much of what we look at all day, our smartphones, computers, TVs, like the amount of screen time, and like 99% of it is like one-way facing. Like, they're talking or sending something to you, and there's no like real, they're trying to get you to fill out a form or click the buy button, but they're not trying to get you to like interact always. So that was like really cool for me. It was like, you can take kind of your marketing, take almost like a landing page, or take your email marketing or your website and kind of turn it into like this interactive back and forth thing that, like, when people engage with it, they, when you're in a conversation, you can't like tune out, right? Like, you're part of it. So it's great for like building rapport and that sort of thing, and kind of also guiding the conversation at the same time. So that was like the number one kind of like, not so much like measurable, but that's what stood out to me at first. I was like, oh, this is really cool. And then what you could do within it, like, think of like this conversation right now, like it could go 100 different ways. Right. But like, if you give someone a landing page or something like that and they see it, like, how many different ways is that going to go? Like, not a lot. Like, the customer doesn't really have a whole lot of say in that experience or that interaction. So you're giving that customer a little bit more like freedom in how they're interacting with your business. So that's kind of like just a big picture, like, fun aspect of it that really jumped out at me. I was like, people want this. They want interaction. People are like, they're isolated, and, we're more connected than ever, but also more like disconnected than ever. Right. So giving people that interactive, even if it's not always a real person, because there's kind of the automated chat, right? And then there's the live chat. And, a good strategy is always going to have both. But even if it's automated, like, it still feels like an interaction. And you're still giving people that feeling, and they still have some control over that. So it's really just, I was like, this could create a really fun customer experience. And then, like, you can also, keep it light, So like, most people think that like chatbots are like, oh, you type an answer, it's back some answer. And that's a lot of them. Like most chatbots out there, they get a bad rap because most of them really aren't very good. They're kind of like, they do like the most basic possible lowest common denominator response. Like, oh, thanks for reaching out. Like, here's our number to call. It's like, no, I interacted with that, so I didn't have to call a number, especially younger generations. Like, good luck getting a millennial to like pick up the phone, or Gen X or Gen Y and like call you. Like, it's not going to happen. Right. Everything's text-based. So you're meeting people where they're at. You're giving them what they want. And instead of creating just this like boring canned response, it's, you're inserting like emojis and GIFs and giving them different options. And the copy is like, you're making it kind of like represent your brand, right? If you're like a light and fun brand, or if, you can give your chatbot even like a mascot, right? Like, I've done this with clients, is like, I'll give them kind of like these 3D kind of bot looking things, and they get to pick like their color scheme and then name it, put their logo on it. And so like it greets people. It's like, hey, I'm like Breakthrough Bot, right? Or something like that. And it kind of like gives it its own like little persona. So I think, it's kind of like back when I was in CrossFit, right? Like CrossFit is, if anyone's familiar with it, it's not franchised. So there's no like uniformity between gyms. It's an affiliate. So you basically just pay to have a name on your thing. But they're all run completely different. So like when people would ask me about CrossFit, I'm like, yeah, I love CrossFit, but like I don't recommend all CrossFit gyms. Like most of them really aren't very good. But if you find a good one, it's great. And that's kind of how I view chatbots. Like, I don't go out there saying like, oh yeah, like you need a chatbot, like Oprah with the cars or whatever. But like, but I say, a good chatbot, one that's like really well thought out and, does more than just spit back answers, can be a major asset.
Yeah. And you know what? You triggered a light bulb in my head as you said this about all the different ways you could take something, but if you bring them to a landing page, it narrows down, some of those directions that you could take the conversation. And the way it clicked in my head, being the father of 3 young kids, it's like, I'm presenting options. They're both win-win, but I'm presenting those options and they're going to choose from those options. So that's the way it registered in my head. But I love that you can personalize it. Like you said, you can humanize it in a better way of kind of describing it. Of this is, yes, there is a bot aspect to this, but at the same time, it doesn't have to feel so rigid.
Right. I like to say automation with a personality. It's kind of how I like to say it. So yeah, I mean, it's fun. And then like, tech wise and stuff, again, I don't know how to code. It's drag and drop software, but it can get very sophisticated. But basically like on the back end, your options are limitless in terms of the amount of different experiences and options that you can give people. So I just find it to be like so flexible, whatever experience you want to create, however you want to do follow up, whatever, you can go 1,000 different ways with it, right? Again, just like any normal conversation can go a million different ways. So you're always trying to kind of think, how do I give them what they're looking for while also kind of guiding them to where I want them to go? And that's always like kind of that perfect middle line that you're looking for when designing a good chat experience. So, I build all of my chatbots through Facebook Messenger. It's the most common platform for messaging, pretty much, outside maybe like WhatsApp or Instagram DM. But those are coming soon, which will be exciting. But like within that, most people don't know that you can actually build a list within Messenger or within SMS the same way that you can with email. So, email is, your email inbox is probably pretty crowded, I'm guessing, unless you're living in like a cave these days, like your email inbox is blowing up. So, you got probably on average 20 to 30% open rates for like a normal list, right? And, typically it's going to be the same 20 to 30% of people that open it over and over, your real true fans. But with SMS or Messenger, like we're trained that when we get a text, or that when we get a Facebook message that we check it and open it, right? So on average, those channels, the open rates are like 80 to 90%, and the click-through rates are like 15 times what they are in email. So it's really cool to take that, what I call omni-channel approach, where you're using these different mediums to reach your audience and grow your audience. And so like, you use email for your constant kind of like frequent newsletters or promotions or whatever, but then you have like your SMS or your messenger that you can broadcast out for those like, Black Friday sales or those really important things once every month or two, where you really need to reach everyone. So it's really cool to work those together, and it's not necessarily like one or the other. People are like, oh, well, I don't want to use messenger instead of email, or, and it's not like a one or the other thing, it's like it's all meant to work together and do it right. So
yeah,
I enjoy creating those experiences.
Yeah, I love that you specialize in it too. So you talked on another podcast with a mutual friend, Alex Vonderhaar, about how most agencies approach chat bots as an add-on, an upsell that they just outsource, or they just go with one of those basic ones because that's not their bread and butter. That's not what they know. They specialize in Facebook ads, or they specialize in SEO, or whatever the case may be. So the great thing is you specialize in this. This is something that you really know and really have dialed in, rather than just it's something I offer.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think part of it for me is, again, I was doing that Facebook ads like most agencies do out there. And I was like, I always prided myself on trying to like kind of think differently or do something different. So I'm like, I think this could be kind of that new different thing that I also find a little bit more fun and engaging than what I was doing previously. So I think, yeah, specializing, like I said, is a hard lesson I learned over time.
Yeah, for sure. We all have those challenges that we never expected to have happen, and all these different things that things take longer. All these things that we've talked about, those are definitely challenges that anybody who starts their own business comes across. Mm-hmm. So do you mostly work direct to the consumers? You talked about with this Shopify channel, are you reaching out directly to stores, or is this going through an agency you've partnered with, or how do people utilize your services?
Yeah, so there's a couple sides to that. I am still kind of reaching out to bigger Shopify stores to do custom work for, but my main thing that I'm working on is, again, creating this like plug and play program that smaller stores can use, or even like an agency. I have a couple agencies I'm kind of talking to about this right now, is taking the template and the videos kind of to utilize it that I put together and just using that as a value add for their clients that they're running Facebook ads for or building their Shopify store for. So the majority is, that smaller Shopify store owner who doesn't have a huge budget to pay an agency thousands of dollars to do it right. Or, honestly, if you were to go out and really learn it on your own to get close to the kind of the degree I have with it, would probably take you like 6 months of like pretty regular practice, which, if you're running a business and you're smaller, you don't have that kind of time to just like go learn this that way, or, a lot of other people, they're like, oh, I'm going to do that. I'm going to implement that. And then again, it ends up being crap because you really don't know it. So that's where I'm trying to like I think that's where my fit in the market is like these kind of smaller stores and agencies that, don't have massive budgets and don't have the time to learn it on their own. So that's where I'm trying to make my claim.
There you go. Yeah, I love that you are challenging things. You're, looking outside the mold and doing all these different things and trying to find the best avenues to reach your customers and help your customers out. And, I definitely see through your whole story how hustle ties in to that. But I want to ask you, what is your personal definition of the word hustle?
the first thing that pops in my mind is like the bro marketing version of hustle, right? Like Gary Vee, like you don't sleep and you work 28 hours a day and all that kind of like ridiculous, stuff. But
yeah, we're trying to move away from that.
Yeah, exactly. I think my definition is more of doing whatever it is you can to go after what it is you want on a really consistent basis. Because I think the consistency is something that I've worked really hard on and something I really was not good at. And I think that's the big separator between people who kind of like reach those big goals and the people who don't. Because there's a lot of people who like, they have one day or 2 days where they like crush it and like, oh yeah, hustle or whatever. But like to show up and do it like consistently, like day in and day out when you don't want to, show up on the weekends, separation days like that. Like, I think that for me is hustle, is doing it, even when it is boring or doesn't feel great.
That is 100% true. And, you're showing that right now of, you wanted this lifestyle, you wanted to be able to travel, you wanted to do all these things, and it went completely against what you were brought up with. Getting the degree, getting a secure job, all these things. And so, I love that you are consistently pursuing that action. And even though the avenue has changed a few times, it's changed for me multiple times over the years too. So I can definitely relate on that. But I love that you are exemplifying of keep at it, keep doing those consistent actions, even when you don't want to. And that's just awesome. I can definitely see that in you and through our network of people that we connect with, and seeing all the things that you're doing. It's really great to see that. So I don't want to take too much of your time. I really appreciate the time that you have given me thus far. So I want to give you a chance to plug where people can best find more information about you. But before I do that, I want to ask you one more question, personal or business. What is it that excites you about the future?
Oh man, I'm a very future kind of focused person. I consider myself to be a bit of a dreamer, right? Vision boards and all that fun stuff. So I think when I look at the future, it's not necessarily like, and this kind of follows the theme of like changing lanes a little bit, right? Like I don't really see myself being a chatbot guy 5-10 years down the road. Like what really, and like I said, I don't define myself by what I do currently. I think what I really excites me is I'm like a huge personal development junkie. Tony Robbins, Andy, Ed, lots of reading courses, psychology, like that's what I love. So I think in the future, I'm really excited about coaching people and impacting people on that level, through podcasts and blogs and all that kind of stuff. That's what really excites me. That's what I'm kind of spending my like nights and weekends on right now, is working on those kind of future or side hustles that I hope to turn into my main hustle. That's kind of like the stuff that, again, you ask people like, what would you do if you didn't have to work? That's kind of probably what I would spend a lot of my time on. So that's probably what I'm looking forward to in the future, is launching that blog. I got a podcast coming out real soon. And I mean, obviously I'm still really looking forward to a lot of, what I got going on with this business. But I got a whole bunch of stuff that I'm really excited about in a variety of spaces. So
yeah,
I don't know if that's a very specific answer, but
no, I love it, because I'm the same way of it. It's like, okay, I've got this thing that I'm passionate about. I'm focused on hustle energy, but at the same time, there's always side projects I want to work on top of that, and spend my nights and weekends and things like that. So I can totally relate to you on that, and I appreciate that. So where is it that people can best find more information about you and connect with you?
probably on Instagram is a great place. So on Instagram, it's Bradley_Roth. I haven't been super active just lately because I've been trying to do a little bit more digital detox and be present and all that good stuff. But on Instagram, and then also Facebook, just Bradley Roth. Probably easier to find me on Instagram though, I would imagine. But that's, yeah, or you can email me if you want to reach out some specific, Bradley@breakthroughdigital.net. And yeah, love connecting with people from all kinds of different areas.
Yeah, for sure. I'll make sure to include links in the show description so people can just click on that to connect with you as well. But, I want to say thank you for taking time out of your day, and I really appreciate all the value you've provided on the show today. So I know I've gotten value out of this. So I know my audience has gotten value out of this. So I encourage you all to get out there and hustle the day. Hey everybody, thank you for watching this video all the way through here on YouTube. One thing that would help us out tremendously to share this value with more people is if you subscribe to the channel, like the video, make a comment, share it with others, click that bell notification to say, hey, I want to see more videos like this. That would tremendously help us out, and I would sincerely appreciate if you did that. Thank you again for watching.